Welcome to Being Revolutionary.
Greetings, revolutionaries, and welcome back. We are starting off with our Season 2, Episode 1 today, which we're kind of excited about. So I know that Nathan was on pins and needles as to whether our producers were going to renew us for a second season, right?
I almost cancel cultured ourselves. Oops, hey, don't go down that route.
As my own producer, I don't think we're worth the time.
Save the hot political takes for later this season during the presidential election. No, it's good to be back. Excited for Season 2. Honestly, we didn't know what was going to happen, as we talked about in the first episode of the first season. We were just kind of throwing it out there, and we got a lot of really cool response from people listening, clients, friends and family members, people who were enjoying what we were doing. So we're happy to continue to do it. We have a good time with it. And I think the stuff we talked about in Season 1 is going to play really well into where we're headed with Season 2. But obviously we have a kind of a new sound, a new look, kind of a new format we're headed to as well. We're going to be learning as we go through this. But we want to make sure we're keeping things fresh and moving in the direction that people who are listening want things to go as well. So if you have any feedback for us on what you thought about Season 1, what you liked, what you didn't like, or as we get into Season 2 here, what you're liking or what you're not liking, just let us know, and we'll, brush it off and just do what we want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And for those of you joining us on the podcast, one of the other things that we added, because we got some feedback from some of our deaf households. So for those that may not know, Nate and I, we had begun working with deaf households. It's been almost 3 years now when we first started. And there's a story behind that. We're not going to dive into that right now. But anyways, we actually got contacted by some of our deaf families, and they're saying, "Hey, how can we be a part of this?" And at the time, we didn't know if this podcast thing was going to work. We were just kind of trying stuff. We didn't know how it was going to be received. And that was sort of the answer that they got. Well, now what's happening is, you might be listening to us audibly in your car or through your headphones or whatever right now, but we're actually on video as well, and we're going to be pushing these episodes out to our YouTube channel, which coincidentally is titled Being Revolutionary. So if you search us on YouTube, you can subscribe there as well. But there we'll have the closed captioning option there for our deaf households, and they'll be able to participate in our ramblings as well.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, if you need the displeasure of seeing us talk as well as listening to us, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button and the subscribe and smash it and
all the cool cultural whatevers that people say. Yeah, absolutely. And you also get the added benefit that it's not that I don't talk awkward enough, but you get to see my face as I'm doing it now too. So you're welcome.
Right. So. Well, and clearly Matt has addressed his quarantine hair and I have not. So this is going to be getting epically worse throughout this season. So stay tuned for that.
Anyways, today's episode, what we've got set for you guys is it's called Minding the Gap. So basically, this was a phrase that has kind of been adopted through culture internationally as the years have gone by, but it originates from 1969, where the London Underground created the phrase "mind the gap" as a warning to train passengers to be careful when stepping over the gap from the station to from the station platform into the train door. So in today's episode, we're going to use that analogy, minding the gap, and I'm using air quotes here for those that are watching, and I just let you know.
You don't have to tell them; you just showed them.
I know. But anyways, we're going to be using minding the gap as an analogy to illustrate decision-making processes. So we're having fun and goofing off right now, but this is actually something I think is very important, and I know, Nate, you share the same perspective that when it comes to setting goals and achieving goals, people set goals all the time. It's sort of a joke, when you have a New Year's resolution, and they're like, oh, well, how long did it last? 3 days or whatever, but really it's goal setting and the inability to reach those goals and the frustration that happens. We're going to be talking about that today. So minding the gap in the sense that you're going to be aware of where you're at and where you want to be and the steps that you progressively take to get there. So anyways, Nate, how you doing, man?
Good. I think this is an interesting way for us to kick off a season, because a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is a discussion of where human behavior meets financial planning. And the reason we spend so much time talking about those concepts is because it's the part of the equation that we can control. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in our conversation today about, parts of your goals and your goals being achieved that you can control and parts of them that you can't. But primarily, one of the things I've noticed after 15 years of specifically working with people on their personal financial goals is a lot of people set out with all the best intentions and maybe even a strategic plan for executing things, and it just doesn't happen the way they think it's going to for one reason or another. So what I think is going to be interesting for us is to explore that a little bit and hopefully create a little bit of a template, or at least kind of a working ethic that people can have running through their mind or in their conversations with their spouses or their significant others or their advisors about their goals in the right context to have a better percentage chance of success the next time around or on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, totally. And why don't I go ahead and start us off with asking you the question, can you think of a time when you had a goal that you didn't hit? Put you on the spot.
No.
Never.
No, I'm just kidding.
100% perfect.
Plenty of times. I mean, people who know me know that I'm a pretty motivated, like self-determined person. So all the time. I mean, I'm easily my own harshest critic, always have been. And any expectations that have ever been put on me by other people, believe me when I tell you, my own expectations for myself were much higher. So the other kind of, it's fortunate and unfortunate part about my own personality is that I'm constantly measuring my own efficiency in my own head, kind of subconsciously, and judging myself, which is good for results, but it's kind of annoying for self-empathy in a way. And what I will say is that most of the goals that I didn't hit weren't really my goals to begin with. So I think the first and most important question we can ask ourselves while we're considering this kind of conversation is, the goals that you're thinking about or wanting, are they really your goals? Or are they goals that have been put on you by other people? And that's not to say we don't have to do things for other people, whether it's, our family or friends or our employer. But oftentimes when you have to do things that are not necessarily within your goals, it's more of a practice and discipline than a pursuit of an actual goal or priority in your own life. And I will say, the more of your professional and personal life you can align with your actual goals and priorities, the more fulfillment you're going to feel. And the less it's ever going to feel like you're doing work. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's totally true.
So to answer your question really specifically, definitely throughout my career, we've had a lot of professional standards, right, that were put on us by our employer, kind of expectations for performance or whatever you want to call them, sales numbers or new client activity, those types of things. Of course, a professional organization has some leadership over their staff and some expectations there. But I will say that's one of the best pieces of training I got from our leaders at Trilogy, or my direct managers over the years. Very, very few times was I asked to create goals that weren't actually my own goals based on where I wanted to be 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now.
I totally agree with that, because I struggled with goal hitting. I'm pretty ambitious. I know that's hard for you to believe after working with me, however many years this has been now, but
right.
I tend to, with my ambition, I just kept falling victim to the biting more off than I could chew kind of thing. And like you, trilogy helped me really kind of change the way that I set my goals and saw myself. And I know that's some of the stuff that we're going to cover today.
Right.
So as far as covering a few strategies that can help hitting goals, as I've mentioned, goal setting can be something of an art form. You've got to make sure that the method you choose works for you. If we're talking about your household, this isn't something that you can necessarily it's not a dictatorship. That very rarely ever works for anybody. We're doing it my way because that's the way we're doing it. I mean, I guess you could probably slam that down some people's throats, but overall, you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page as well. And what we're covering today can absolutely be used from a financial strategies standpoint. But really what we're trying to cover today is like anything that you want to, any goal that you want to hit. It could be losing weight, working out, help me out here, Nate, other goals that are non-financially related.
Yeah. I mean, how about family time or work-life balance?
Nice.
Or development of relationships, new friendships, getting out of your comfort zone, any number of those kind of personal development, kind of cliche things you could, buy 300-page books on that have really cool looking covers on them.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the idea is goals and priorities shape our behavior, period. Yeah. Right? So it's either going to be your goals or goals and expectations that other people put on you, or maybe for people that you care about in your life, building a communication structure so that you or multiple people can participate together in creating those goals and priorities, like in a family structure. But no matter what, your behavior is going to be aligned with what your priorities are. So exactly. You may as well think about it a little bit so you can get out of your life what you actually want.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into some of those strategies. So we're not claiming that we know everything or that this is the best way of doing things. We're going to toss out a couple of different things that have worked for us professionally, personally, but more importantly, really just want to kind of introduce the concept of what goal setting really is and what tends to be the most helpful perspective to have, especially if you feel like you're failing. Nate, I know you've got some really great stuff you're going to drop on us here later about feeling like you've failed goals. So, anyways, how about you start us off? SMART goals. I know you're familiar with this one.
Yeah, let's pick the lowest hanging fruit. Almost, I would wager that anybody that's been around a professional organization that's listening to this or watching this has heard of a SMART goal. SMART goals it's an acronym standing for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So this might seem a little bit cliche on the nose, super obvious, but there's a reason why everybody knows about SMART goals. It's because they work. They really do. So if you create a very specific goal, right, that has a measurable time horizon, that's actually achievable, right? That's not so, and you referred to this earlier, Matt, where your eyes are bigger than your head or your heart, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually achievable / realistic. And that's timely. In other words, that there's a sense of urgency for it. You can create a game plan to go after and attack that goal and actually measure your level of success in getting towards it. So again, this is the low-hanging fruit in a goals conversation, but it's the best place to start, because if you've literally never taken the time to create a concrete, specific, measurable goal and then a game plan of how you're going to achieve it realistically in a timely manner, you should try it. It really is. It's amazing what you can accomplish through very simple, measurable activity in moving yourself forward towards a goal.
Yeah. And in specific context of this, because I know it's one of our favorite ways of talking about these types of subjects, a non-SMART goal, and I'm just tossing this out there real generic, I want to go on vacation to Italy. And people will say that, hey, one of these days I'm gonna go on vacation to Italy. And it's like, okay, great.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Italy someday.
Yeah, exactly.
You hear that kind of stuff all the time from people, right?
Yeah. And then they just never seem to get there. And I mean, some folks they might actually already have the means and resources to do that. But in general, and it can be any goal. I want to buy a car. I want to pay cash for a car, whatever. It can be any of this type of stuff. But that's why the SMART acronym is so helpful, because, like a SMART, an example, using the same example, I want to go on vacation to Italy. A SMART version of that would be in 2 years. So it's specific and measurable, timely as well. I would like to have $12,000 saved to go on a vacation to Italy. So
right.
hopefully in that case of this person, and like I said, it's just a generic kind of application, but it's more specific, it's measurable, so that there's a time frame and a dollar amount. Is it realistic? Well, $12,000 saved in 2 years, that's going to depend on that person's resources. And timely, is it within the time frame that that they're wanting to hit it?
It's a good way of putting it. I mean, the reality is that if you create those benchmarks for yourself, you can then start to draw a line between point A and point B. So if you want to have $12,000 saved up in 2 years, well, it's not that difficult to have a very common sense approach to getting there, right? And by the way, to measure whether or not that's realistic, because if you can't save up the required amount of money per month, or you're not going to have some milestones happen between now and then as far as increase in income or tax refund money or whatever is going to get you there, you're going to know that. And maybe you have to adjust the goal itself. Maybe I'm only going to have a $10,000 trip to Italy, right? Yep. So maybe it's a few less nights or cheaper airfare, or maybe I must absolutely have $12,000 when I go to Italy. So maybe I can't go until 3 years from now instead of 2.
Yeah.
But then you see the nuance of what's happening there. What you're doing is you're self-coaching your kind of internal psychology on, I'm going to do this. It's just a matter of when, is what's happening there. Or you're taking a completely unrealistic expectation you have of yourself and you're blowing it up. You're killing it.
Yeah.
So it can be replaced by something that's actually real. And by the way, both of those are great things to do.
Both of them helps you get to that, achieve whatever it is that your end result. Of course, with some adjustments.
But I hope you can help us with this, because you actually do a good job of this, especially when we're working on plans for clients.
Sure.
That's step one. Step two then is to kind of create the rubric for activity between now and there. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorites. And it's something that I've used a few times in my personal life. So basically the 10, I refer to as 10 to 1. I don't know if it's the name. I just say it that way because that's how I reference it. But essentially, it's
just
time
say
horizon.
It with confidence, and it's true.
10 to 1. Hey, I dubbed it. Yeah, I named it. No, I totally thought this up after I read it on the internet. No, it's a time. It's goal setting time horizons, and I do them. Tend to do this backwards because I like my goals to feed into the next goal. So I build out the 10-year ones, the 10-year goals first, then 5 years from, 5 years from now. So it's your current time now. 10 years from now, I want to be here, whatever the goals are. I want to have this much money saved. I want to be, having my house paid off, or whatever the goal might be. 10 years, 5 years. What are my goals then? And it could be making a certain amount of income so that I can pay more towards my mortgage if the goal is paying off my mortgage. So if I'm going to do income at 5 years, I want to make sure that I'm making, $200,000 a year in 5 years from now. Well, what's my 3-year goal? What's that going to take to get me to the $200,000 a year? Like in our profession, and we're in a little bit of an unusual profession in the sense that we can kind of control our income depending on how much business activity we're generating. Folks that are on set salaries or hourly, right, it might be a little bit more difficult to control that. But I also know from experience that the sheer fact that you've got a goal like that, just something happens to you psychologically and you just start naturally building into that. So what's really interesting is I wouldn't be surprised that even for folks that are hourly or salaried, like at a set salary, if they had a goal of making let's say 35% more than what they were making today. They're going to make 35% more in 5 years. Just having that mentality and that goal there, I wouldn't be surprised if that tended to happen, or at least you saw a pretty decent increase in income. May not be that 35%, but still just having the goal there and these mechanics in place help you hit those.
Well, or flip it around. If you don't have the goal, I can almost promise you it's not going to happen by accident.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Oops. I just got a raise. Yeah. I don't think I've heard anyone really say that.
Maybe that comes off a little, motivational speakery, but
Right.
but the reality of that is the mental exercise and kind of the activity involved with keeping that stuff on the front of your mind, whether it's writing your goals down consistently or reviewing them with people who are in a positive, influential position in your life so that they're aware of what your goals are and can hold you accountable to them. That could be a spouse, that could be a colleague at work, it could be a boss. That's just as important as the creation of the goals themselves, because it's how you give them blood and meaning.
Yeah.
So perhaps can you personalize this for us a little bit more, Matt? We've been talking kind of abstract. Do you have any experiences from your own life that you can draw upon?
Oh, totally.
In helping us tease this kind of 10-to-1 type format out? Because I think I really like this 10-to-1 concept.
Yeah. So for me personally, I've been working at Trilogy it's been going on 6 years now. And when I first started, I was single, so I'm now married. I was renting, and I wanted to buy a home. And so our boss, Jeff Seiferling, he was having me go through this practice, the 10-to-1. So where do you see yourself in 10 years? Well, that's a big ask, especially if you've never done it before. So it took me a little while to even get the concept under my belt. But one of them I chose was in 5 years, I wanted to have purchased a house. So mortgage, whatever. It would have been fantastic. I would have blown that goal out of the water if I paid for the house, but I wanted to actually be a homeowner in 5 years. So that was the goal that I set. So then that 3 years, I was making sure that I had, I know that I tell you that I work these backwards, but I'm going to do it forwards this time just to make it confusing.
It'll make more sense. From a timeline standpoint. I gotcha.
I had to reverse engineer this, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to walk us through in the 1 to 5 order rather than in reverse like we've been talking. So my goal was in 5 years to have a house bought, like I mentioned. So in year 1, what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that I had all my debt paid off, and I wanted to focus on increasing my income so that I had the proper debt to income ratio. So that's back to that SMART goal strategy we were talking about. That was specific and measurable and timely. Then in year 3, I wanted to begin saving, and I wanted a 15% down payment so that I could purchase my house. And then I wanted to continue on increasing my income. Then that way, like I mentioned in originally, year 5, buy a home, and I wanted to make sure that the mortgage payment did not exceed 25% of my take-home income. And that's just a good measure overall. It's formulaic.
Nice conservative plan.
Yep. So what actually ended up happening is I actually hit this goal in year 4. And part of that was because I had the goals there, so I was diligently working on them. I tend to be compulsive and try to overachieve, so there's another little variable in there. But what really helped, and this wasn't why I got married, but getting married, I got married in year 3, which wasn't on the goals. I got married in year 3. And as my wife and I talked about this, she actually shared the same goals and passions that I did about this. So because I had that extra, or I shouldn't say because we had each other's income supplementing that, it caused us to reach those goals sooner than what I had originally sought out to hit.
Yeah, you had like a positive alpha introduced into the situation because, and I don't want to get too philosophical on this, but to be honest, I tend to be a believer that people who are hardworking and well-meaning tend to have more positive things happen to them as a result, because they tend to surround themselves with people who are that way. So, you could potentially even argue that the reason you're in a position to be in a relationship and get married is because you've been building your life that direction, which is attractive to other people.
Wow. That's pretty deep there, brother.
So not to say that, true love can't exist outside of goal setting, but I will say,
easy.
but but follow me on this. Let's say that you're going along this path between year 1 and year 5, and you meet somebody who doesn't share those same goals and passions that you have. I can promise you the relationship is going to be more difficult to navigate as a result of that. Right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where when we talk about creating, I use the word ethic a lot in our decision making. And I do that on purpose because the concept of having an ethic by which we make decisions, a lot of times those ethics are going to be informed by priorities and goals.
Yeah.
And they are kind of the bedrock for how, when we don't have more information available, at least I know this much is how the ethic of how I make decisions. And if it doesn't measure up against that, I'm going to have to either wait or say no in many cases, myself or to others. And so it can be helpful. It's not just about making more money, or advancing my career. It's just not, accumulating a huge pile of stuff throughout your life. We know that. But people who have clear priorities that come from their character, who they are, where that decision making is in line with that, tend to have less volatile lives, period, in our experience. And we've been doing it for a long time.
Well, that made me think of like one of my first questions that I ask prospective clients when I meet with them for the first time is, so when do you want to retire? At what age? And at first I thought it was kind of funny, and it's actually kind of shocking, I would say. And Nate, I know you ask folks the similar questions. I mean, what percentage wise, what would you say people of the people we ask those questions actually have a concrete answer to when they want to retire?
Very few. I mean, obviously the older you are, the more percentage wise do. But I would say less than half, absolutely less than half of people who are under 55 years old have any clarity on the subject whatsoever. Not that I don't necessarily think that that's wrong. Like, if you ask me right now, I mean, I'm 36. And if you asked me to give you a concrete number of when I want to be retired, I have no idea. I have a really clear idea of when I want to be completely financially independent by.
Sure.
The
thing that blows my mind about this, because I actually asked my own mom this question at one point, who prior to me becoming her financial advisor, there was another financial advisor she'd worked with, and she said she didn't know. It wasn't even like, maybe I would like to retire by this age, or I'm thinking around maybe mid-60s. Like, it was, I don't know. I never even thought about it. And in context of our conversation we're having now, basically all that's being said there is, I don't have a goal. I don't have a goal of when I want to be retired. And my response to that a lot of the time is, how can you hit a goal that you don't even know exists? And so that's, obviously why we're having this conversation and doing this episode, is because it's something that, we feel needs to be brought to people's attentions and start working on it, but
it's like that old fable, right? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. That's it. Exactly.
Right? That's something our colleague Scott has used that for years. And I always thought that was amazing. It's just such a succinct way of communicating that concept of, if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every single time. Right. So,
or Wayne Gretzky's quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. Exactly. So functionally speaking, for people listening to this, those are just a couple of really time-tested strategies, kind of SMART goals, or what Matt called the 10-to-1, which is working out from kind of the way I've talked about it with clients. What is the most wildly successful version of yourself you can envision? And then start working a plan reverse engineering, as you said, Matt, back to where you are today to create measurable steps you can take forward. But maybe you're the type of person that doesn't do really well with specifics. And that's a lot of people we work with over the years, right? I mean,
So true.
Not everybody has a brain that works in the way mine does, which is like kind of constantly self-judging, right? Some people have a much more kind of fluid approach to life that's more driven by what I would call culture, that they're culture that they're from, culture that they're a part of, the way their friendships and relationships are, shape a lot of how their decision-making concepts are. So if you're more that type of person, or if this whole first half of the conversation has made no sense to you and you've never done anything like that or even thought about those things, it's okay.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you have to change completely who you are, but you probably should be aware of that there are a lot of people around you that are living that way. And that's why a lot of people are very focused on achievement. So whether you like it or not, it's part of the world you're in.
Definitely
really.
our culture. And I know we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that here in a few too. But as far as these strategies we talked about may not work for some folks, or maybe they're trying to find their own way. Do you have any ideas or suggestions as to what they might do?
Yeah. I mean, just like anything else, we've talked about this in many different facets of a financial plan, but you've got to have some policies, or what I've called earlier in this episode, ethics, that you can at least lean on. And if you're not the type of person that naturally does that for yourself, it involves somebody who you have a trusting relationship to help you with it. It could be a significant other, especially if it was a household goal that other people are going to be sharing in with you. Or if it's something related to work or your professional life, it's probably most helpful to go not lateral or down, but up from where you are within your organization or maybe within your career path, and have conversations with people who are who you want to become someday professionally, and lean into them for some help in creating some policies.
I think that's a fantastic point you bring up as far as like almost like mentorship, because, and this is kind of a Captain Obvious moment. So of course, why wouldn't you seek out the advice from someone that has actually is where you want to be? They obviously know how to make it happen. So I think that's, I love that.
Because it's scary. I mean, honestly, right? Approaching somebody in that fashion takes a lot of humility, number one.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a secret. People love talking about their own success. Right? Right?
True,
of course, it's exciting.
Right.
Because we've achieved stuff. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually extremely motivational for other people. So
can be inspiring even.
Oh, absolutely. So if you have a goal, or you want to have better goals, get some accountability, right? From someone that's got a similar goal to you, or that's sharing in that goal, or somebody who can literally help you craft a plan. And if all else fails, one last thing to think about is, at bare minimum, just figure out whose priorities you're living in. Are they your own, or are they somebody else's?
Yeah.
And I've said that a couple other times, but here's the reality. The way I define a priority, and if you're someone who's listening to this, who's read my quarterly essays that I've written for the last couple of years, you'll know that I have beat this topic to a pulp. But my definition of priorities is the life you are living is in line with the tension between who you currently are and who you would like to be someday. Right in the middle of that tension is what your priorities are. And so you have to constantly be asking yourself, is the decision I'm about to make moving me from who I am today towards who I want to become someday? And that's a very simple test you can apply, right? So I'll borrow a really very simple example. If you want to be the type of person that saves more money for retirement, now that is not a smart goal. That's a dumb goal, right? No,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
it's a good goal,
There
but
is no stupid.
it's not a,
wait. Oh, never mind.
right. It's not a very specific goal. It's not measurable. It has no, I mean, it is the opposite of a SMART goal. I want to save more money, right? Well, at least it's a priority. And you can use that to shape your decision making. For instance, if you have a habit of driving home from work and stopping at discount stores to look at clothes, and you struggle on spending too much money on clothes and you want to save more money for retirement, resist the urge to get off the freeway and go to the discount stores. I mean, at least that decision is in line with your priorities. Now, is it going to lead to exponentially higher retirement savings? Not likely, right? But it'll probably be better than you would have been the other way around.
Yeah.
So that's a great kind of concept that you can live in, even if you're not a super concrete, goals-oriented, numbers-oriented type person, to kind of get yourself moving along that direction.
A while back, I read a book by Brene Brown called Daring Greatly. Fantastic book. Not so much about goals, but again, we're not talking about that. But there was this excerpt in her book that she talks about, and it's basically how strategic thinking and cultural thinking differ. So as we were preparing for this episode, and I was kind of drilling down on that, I really gave that some thought. And like having a decision-making policy, because we talk to folks about having financial policies in their household, which basically those are decisions. So it's sort of the same concept, but it can be applied across everything that you may encounter goals-wise or in your household. But strategic thinking versus cultural thinking. So we'll kind of define that. Strategic thinking, it's asking yourself, what do we want to do and how are we going to accomplish it? Okay. And this decision-making process is typically rules-based. If then that, if this, then that kind of thing. If and then.
Right. Like an equation.
Exactly. It very like unemotional. It's very logical. It's not very sexy at all, because it's definitely not a Hollywood movie, because that's all about the emotion and all about the drama. We want to lessen that when it comes to decision making, so that it matches your goals. Cultural decision making tends to be lifestyle based. So I got to go to a Starbucks and drop $10-15 because I'm meeting up with the friends and we're going to be talking for a little while, and that's what we do. It's just how it works. It's just whatever.
It's what we do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
what we do.
So perfect. Yes.
Exactly. So
or to borrow language from last season, why not?
Yeah, why not? Why shouldn't I do that? But yeah,
I worked hard. I made this money. Why not?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I deserve it. That's the other thing. And these are obviously emotional based decisions. They tend to be about who you are and not where you want to be. Okay. Tends to promote, like I said before, emotional based decisions. They're feeling focused, not goal focused. And there's two main identifiers. These decisions tend to be conditional. So if you find yourself the next morning going, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I don't even understand, because the conditions were right. Or they're habitual. You don't even think about it anymore. You go and spend, $5-10 at Starbucks because, again, that's what you do. You go every morning. I was actually a habit I had to break. I was spending, let's see, Starbucks and eating out. Okay, moment of transparency here. So I was doing about $270 a month between eating out at lunch during the workday and going to Starbucks. And I simplified, started bringing my lunch, bought a cold brew machine, and now I think I spend maybe $40 a month.
Right.
And I know that sounds extreme, but it actually was. And my wife and I had a conversation. Didn't match our goals. Didn't match where we wanted to be. My lifestyle. So we put a stop to it.
So using your language, just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, you took that decision-making process from a cultural decision to a strategic decision because, and I think this is going to borrow back to some of my language from earlier, the priorities that you two developed in your life basically demanded that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it dictated our goals policy dictated my behavior versus the other way around.
Obviously, that's an amazing, very personal, transparent example of that. One that was obviously really important to you. And by the way, fed back into, I'm sure, your 10-1 or 5-1 goal actually happening, by the way, right?
Big time.
So, but something that's always been curious to me, and it's something I'm starting to get way more interested in now, especially given what's gone on over the last 6-8 months with the pandemic and just an absolutely insane time to be alive, is what happens when we try really hard. We live in line with our priorities. We set goals that we want to achieve, and we fail. Right?
Yeah.
What next?
Yeah.
Because something that is very, very apparent to me is that, for the most part, the most successful people I know fail all the time because they set extraordinarily aggressive achievement goals for themselves and people around them. And when they fail, they're able to just, examine the rubble, pick up the stuff they like, leave the stuff behind they didn't need, and move on. And that to me has always been an amazing, amazing character trait that is hard to develop.
When you talk to folks that you view as successful, and it could be celebrity status that, that talk about how they got to where they were at, or it could be someone you know personally and have a personal relationship with and you admire their success. If the topic comes up about failure, they almost talk about it reverently, where they're like, oh yeah, I totally would not be where I'm at today if this and this and this didn't completely blow up in my face.
The more I have realized over the years working with people from point A to point B to point F to point Z on different concepts within their financial plans, and starting to get this really wide perspective, the more I've realized that success in goal planning or living within one's priorities is almost never a straight line.
No.
And I'm thinking of this great Instagram post that Chris Hogan from Dave Ramsey's organization posted this last week, which was what people think investing looks like versus what it actually looks like. It was one of these kind of, kitschy things.
I saw
and
that.
It was just it was a straight line up, right?
That's
what people think investing looks like.
Yeah.
And then what investing actually is, which was this super jagged up and down line that ended in the same spot.
Yeah.
Right. It started and ended in the same spot, but the ride was way different. It was a total, Magic Mountain level Six Flags roller coaster versus just this carousel, smooth ride. And that's really what all of life and certainly all of financial life is like. Is even the most well-intentioned, hardworking people are going to encounter curveballs.
Right.
And so here's a really important thing to recognize. And I think this is maybe just where we'll just grab this one point on this topic, because I think we can circle back to this topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
Is when you fail at reaching a goal and you've done kind of the internal investigation as to why the goal
like the self-reflection.
Didn't happen. The forensics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, go back to that SMART goal concept. Was the goal even realistic? Was the time frame you were working on, like all of those kind of things that you could very easily identify, kind of yes or no style questions. But then you also have to ask a secondary question, which is how much of the goal failing was in your control versus out of your control? Right?
Right. Yeah, because there's outlying factors where it doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. It just, things didn't go the way that you needed them to, or they should have, or always had before, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, totally. And if you can come up with a concept of like a percent of the goal achieving or failing that was in your control versus out of your control, that can be very helpful for picking up the good pieces and moving on and leaving the bad pieces in the rubble behind you. Because if you fail the goal and after you do all the forensic work, you figured out, well, the 30% of that I was in control of, I did a great job at.
Yeah.
It just so happened that this particular goal, 70% of it was out of my control, right? Like I'm thinking, what would it have been like this year to be a high level professional restaurant server making a 6-figure income, right?
Right.
You could have had huge goals for this year, right? The economy's booming. I work at a great restaurant. We got a new executive chef. The menu's being redone. We're going to have all kinds of high-end clientele. The sommeliers put together a great high-priced wine list. I'm going to have my best year ever, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And by mid-April, you're getting unemployment checks, right? Like you gotta just stop for a minute and think, okay, how much fault of that server is it if their financial plan didn't make as much progress as they thought it should have this year?
Right.
I mean, come on, right?
Got to cut yourself some slack for sure.
So that's just it. On the flip side of that,
yeah,
right? The opposite
Don't use
can
it
totally
as an excuse.
the opposite could totally be true, right? Like if you're in the type of situation where you set a goal that you wanted to save $10,000 for retirement this year, and you made enough money to do it, and all of the other variables lined up that you should have accomplished that goal, and you get to the end of the year and you only had $5,800 saved for retirement,
that's on you.
Right. You got to put the mirror on yourself, and at some point you've got to make adjustments and say, number one, what are my priorities? Because clearly, and that's what I say, when people don't accomplish goals, it's not because you're not able, it's because your priorities are not yours.
Right.
You're either doing that because someone told you to do, maybe a knucklehead like me, you need to save $10,000 for retirement this year, right? Yeah. And they didn't own it, right?
Yeah.
Or, and this is the stuff you've mostly talked about this episode, Matt, is that your methodology for creating an actual successful step-by-step process to get there didn't have enough work put into it. You put you like you said earlier, your eyes got really big because you're an achievement-oriented person, but then you didn't put the execution plan in place, the kind of daily grind to get you there.
Yeah.
So that you can find out too if you do that kind of forensic analysis on the back end of a goal. Figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, goals don't end up happening on accident. I've never heard of anyone tell me a story where they had a goal and they were like, oh yeah, it just kind of happened, So anyways, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. So we thank you all for listening. Hopefully the minding the gap analogy was proven today. You learned a little bit, caught some insight from some things. One of the things I thought about as we were going through the concept of this episode was that, goals are, it's often the goal, but rarely the steps that were taken to achieve that goal to get the accolades. And, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you pulled that off. That was brilliant. But they don't see you grinding it out. And like a good example is like Super Bowl. I am not nearly the sports fanatic that you are. Actually, I'm not even a sports fanatic, but I'll watch the Super Bowl and I'll pick a team that I want to win. And for me, do I really care who wins? Not really. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh. Whereas someone that watched that team grind out their season and put it together and show up at that final game, that victory is going to mean so much more for them than it would be for someone like me that wasn't really there for watching all the work. But
perfect. No, it's a good analogy. It really is. The process of incremental improvement is absolutely as important as the end result, because the process is repeatable for other goals in the future.
Anyhow, Revolutionaries, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks to bring you some more. In the meantime, if you have any questions or you want to get in contact with us, feel free to reach out to us by emailing brev@trilogyfs.com. So BEREV @trilogy, F as in Frank, S as in Sam.com. And Nate, I don't know, you have anything you want to wrap us up with?
No, that was just great. You threw it out there. We'll be back in 2 weeks. boy, we better land another episode in 2
I know, right?
weeks, or we'll failed our goal.
What do you think I'm doing right after we get off of here?
Right, exactly. No, I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen, or if you checked us out on YouTube for the first time, hello to everybody out there. If you can, of course, as always, subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, hit us with some commentary, subscribe if you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell so you know when new episodes are up. But in the meantime, it's great to be back with you for season 2, and we'll keep doing this as long as you keep wanting it. So just keep being revolutionary. Take it easy.
We'll see y'all soon.
Thank you for being revolutionary.
Being Revolutionary is produced by Matthew Phillips and Nathan Brown in partnership with Trilogy Financial. Research by Nathan Brown and Matthew Phillips. Editing, music, and recording by Paper Street Productions. Art by Matthew Phillips.
The opinions voiced in the show, Being Revolutionary, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial advisor, or tax advisor prior to investing. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.
Matthew Phillips is an investment advisor representative for Trilogy Capital. Investment advisory services offered through Trilogy Capital Inc., a registered investment advisor. Trilogy Capital markets advisory services under the name of Trilogy Financial, an affiliated but separate legal entity. California license number 0K03460. Nathan Brown is a registered representative for LPL Financial and an investment advisor representative for Trilogy Capital. Securities offered through LPL, member FINRA SIPC. California license number 0F37267.